Hey, it's your guy Tyrrell back with the interviews. Barcelona convincingly beat Spurs at Wembley, but how did they do it? Where did they go right? And was this down on Spurs and Pochettino? What did they do wrong? Don't worry, here at the interviews, we've got you covered. So on this edition of the interviews, we're going to break down how Barcelona beat Spurs. So before we get into today's video, don't forget to click the thumbs up button below if you do like this video. Don't forget to click the ring bell as well to make sure that you get daily notifications when we do upload videos. And don't forget to subscribe to our channel. But let's get into the game. In today's video, we're going to break down what Barcelona did right in the first half, where Spurs went wrong, and how Barcelona comfortably defended against them in that first half. And then we'll get to the second half to break down all the chaos that ensued with all the goals that Spurs and Lionel Messi scored. But first, let's get to the lineups. We start with Barcelona. More of a 4-3-3 without the ball, 4-4-2. You can even say that they were 4-3-1-2 with the ball. Suarez up front, Messi to the right, Coutinho to the left. In midfield, Busquets, Artur, and they went with Rakitic. Then we get to Spurs, missing a lot of players, including Moussa Dembele, Christian Eriksen, and they were missing Dele Alli. How did they line up? 4-2-3-1. Harry Kane up front. They had three players that could press the ball very well in Son, Lamela, and Lucas Moura. And in midfield, they went with Harry Winks and Victor Wanyama. Not the Spurs side that you want, given the fact that Winks and Wanyama haven't played much this season. Son has virtually gotten a rest. But when you look at their side, although it may lack creativity, you think about them and they're going to want to press, and they could offer Barcelona some problems. But in this video, we have to break down where Spurs went wrong and where Barcelona went right. And first, we'll start with Barcelona. So when we get into Spurs against Barcelona, the first half, we see Spurs looking to press from the front. You look at their lineup, like I said, 4-2-3-1. Obviously, you're going to have Kane pressing one of the central defenders. You want Lamela to stick onto Busquets. He's renowned for his pressing. You want Son and Lucas Moura to press out to the fullbacks, and then you want the midfield to deal with the midfield. However, Barcelona got off to a great start, and that stemmed from Spurs not really doing a great pressing job throughout the first half. You think about the opening minutes, you think about the goal. And what we see from the goal is not even about Spurs' pressing, it's about Barcelona's attacking movement, and we'll get to that right now. And what we see here is Longley not being pressed, and what happens is that he's able to find Busquets. He finds Busquets. Busquets picks up the ball. He's not pressed as well. He sees Messi dropping into this space here. Messi was able to drop off wherever he wanted because Spurs were so disjointed and they left so much space in midfield and between their midfield bank and their defensive bank and their attacking bank. He drops off here. What happens is that you have Winks push out to him. So Winks pushes out and Son push out, which isn't bad because what happens here is that Lamela ends up dropping off, as does Wanyama, and they're ahead of Artur and they're ahead of Busquets. But what we see now is what we saw from Barcelona throughout the first half. You see Suarez making the run in between, and you see right here Philippe Coutinho making the run as well. Coutinho is able to push forward, and this is why sometimes it looked like a 4-3-1-2, because Messi was dropping off into midfield. And what we know about Lionel Messi is that he's at his best when he has two runners running in behind or looking to break into space in behind the defense. You have Suarez pulling out Davies and Sanchez, and then you have Coutinho pulling out Toby Alderweireld and Trippier. What happens there now is that Alba's able to break into space behind Lucas Moura, who did a terrible marking job on Alba throughout the game, considering Alba's one of Barca's main attacking threats. So the ball's played out there. What happens is that Lloris is off his line. Obviously now you have the Spurs defense dropping off. Coutinho maintains his position, pulls it back to Coutinho, who fires a shot into the net. Again, we're seeing them pull out into those spaces, and that is key because that was a common theme throughout the first half. We'll get to another play a few minutes later, 4 minutes in practically. What we end up seeing here is basically this. Messi drops off into that space again between the midfield bank this time. So he drops off between the midfield bank, combines with Rakitic. Rakitic is able to shift it out to Busquets. He is able to shift it out to Artur. What we end up seeing is that Coutinho already looking to make that run across Trippier. Again, they have a very high line. Trippier is high, so why does Coutinho need to drop deeper when he can stick onto his man and look to break him behind? Artur's pass is intervened by Toby Alderweireld, but again, we're seeing what Barcelona are trying to do here. It even led to Alderweireld booking, and what happened there was that Alderweireld was tight on Coutinho, a ball is sprayed into him. He's able to let the ball shift across his body, and what happens? Alderweireld takes him out. Again, Coutinho playing a bit higher, looking to take advantage of the space being provided down that side because Trippier is trying to maintain his shape and keep it very tight and narrow in between that back four. Another time, we see Coutinho drift out to the left. This time, and what happens there, he drifts out to the left, he sees Messi breaking in, Trippier's there, and what happens is that Messi is engaged by Winks and Wanyama. He pushes by them both, and what happens is that he's able to play that ball into Jordi Alba, plays the ball into Jordi Alba, but again, we're seeing that Lucas Moura is not picking up his man, and that plays a big part to the second goal. Then that second special goal stems from, again, Barcelona finding space down that right-hand side. What we do end up seeing is we see Busquets slide the ball over to Jordi Alba, who is breaking forward. And with Alba breaking forward, again, we see Rakitic this time on the right-hand side, and he pulls out Trippier. So he pulls out Trippier, and what we see here is Messi running in behind that space. Lucas Moura, again, not doing much. Again, the ball is played out there, so Messi gets the ball in that space. Now we have a predicament for Spurs because what we do see is Suarez looking to play off that space in behind Sanchez where Davies is caught out a bit higher, and we see Alderweireld having to push to Messi because he doesn't want Messi to be able to run from there, and we see Coutinho darting into that space there. Messi's able to play the cross in, Sanchez doesn't know who to pick up, so the ball is then chested into the path of Coutinho, who can't get his shot off but ends up pulling it back for Rakitic, who's able to fire a superb effort past the keeper. Lloris has nothing to do. He can't stop it. But again, down Barcelona's left-hand side, they're able to create. Lucas Moura not doing enough. And again, Suarez and Coutinho getting into that space. We look to another opportunity where this time it's just Messi shifting over. Messi shifts over to the right-hand side. And what happens here is when he shifts over to the right-hand side, we have Spurs in a higher line as well. He shifts over there. This time Lamela and Davies do a good job of getting towards him, and they ensure that he is closed down, but they don't close him down tight enough. They're scared to get tight, and what happens here is that Suarez makes the run instantly. You could see it from deep. He's able to make the run across Sanchez, and even then you have Coutinho ahead of Trippier. The ball is played into him down into that space, and he flashes a shot inches wide of the far post. But we're seeing what Barcelona are doing here. They're getting those opportunities, and again, we have more. There's just so many ways that Spurs were not doing a good job here. They drop into more of a 4-5-1, and that was the thing. They were more of a 4-5-1 when Lamela was central, and he was causing Busquets some problems, or at least applying some pressure. Eventually got booked for it, but when he wasn't there, he pushed out to the left and he was closing down Semedo, but Spurs were more of a 4-4-2 because Son wasn't doing a good job of tracking Busquets. But here we have them in the 4-5-1. Busquets not pressed this time, and he's able to pick out Coutinho in ample space down that left-hand side, just behind Lucas Moura again. He's able to run at goal and fire a low drive at the keeper. But throughout the half, we were seeing it time and time again. Alba getting the ball, Lucas taking his time to get across. We have Coutinho again trying to pull off Trippier. The ball sees Suarez play off Davison Sanchez, but he can't get onto it. Between that space of Davies and Sanchez, can't get onto it. But like I said, Barcelona were causing them issues down this flank. They had Artur controlling the tempo, retaining possession. Busquets doing a good job in that role as well. When they didn't have the ball, they weren't eager to press from the front. They dropped off into two banks of four in a 4-4-2, very organized. What happened there was that when they were in that 4-4-2, what would happen is Busquets and Artur would step to Winks and Wanyama, and what they would have is that Rakitic would hold down Davies, Coutinho would push out to Trippier, and they were fine. No real issues controlling Spurs in that regard. And when you look at it from a whole, offensively, the runs of Coutinho and Suarez were causing the Spurs issues. Messi being able to pop up into these pockets of space at will and really dictate the tempo of the game and really influence the game was key. And when you think about it as a whole, Spurs had a lot of things that they need to fix. But when we get down to what they did right, a lot of it's what they did wrong, and what they did right, a lot of it stems from what Barcelona were offering going forward and without the ball. So we get to Spurs. They didn't do much right in the first half. A lot of it stemmed from the fact that they couldn't create chances, and without the ball, they conceded so much space that Barcelona were able to exploit. When they're in more of a 4-5-1 without the ball, they were extremely narrow, and what happened was that they were able to find space in behind Lucas Moura, who was often caught off a bit high. We had Coutinho dropping off into that space. We had Messi dropping off into that space to pick up the ball. We had Alba pushing forward. They had a lot of issues there, and like I said, with Spurs keeping that high line, and then you have Coutinho and Suarez look to break in behind. There were so much gaps in the midfield, and Barcelona were winning the midfield battle based on the fact that Artur was able to retain possession extremely well, and same with Rakitic. And when you think about it, when they moved to more of a 4-4-2 without the ball, and that often stemmed when Son moved out up front with Kane, they did alternate in between the first half, is that Busquets was able to get onto the ball, he was able to dictate play. And when they moved into more of that 4-4-2, so many gaps for Messi to drop into, and that is where Barcelona were really harming Spurs. They did create some chances in the first half. A lot of it stemmed from the fact that Barcelona made some collective mistakes as a unit, and the fact that Barcelona were able to play, or Spurs were able to play long, and they got some chances against Barcelona. And one of the first chances that they really did get, there was a time where we saw Piqué make a big intervention, but that didn't really lead to much. This was the first real chance where they really look to stem forward, and it was when Messi doesn't really track or press Sanchez, and he's able to play the pass into Winks. What we have here is Rakitic pushing out to Davies. You have the central midfielder stepping forward. Artur immediately stems and presses out to Winks, and then you have Busquets there as well. He's able to get around him, and Busquets steps, and now there's a space for Wanyama to break into. Wanyama breaks into him there. The pass is played in. He's able to spread the ball out to Son. Son's able to run at Semedo, but Semedo does a good job. Semedo was pretty solid in the first half, stopping Son and Lamela from breaking forward in 1v1 situations. That was a perfect opportunity. But again, that was one of the few times when Barcelona did look to press from the front and they were bypassed. You think about another opportunity where it's Toby Alderweireld looking to step forward. He plays a long ball into Son, who gets in between the center backs and nods it into Kane, who drops off a bit deeper because he was starved for service. He pushes forward and he fires an effort directly at Ter Stegen. Again, we see more punts from Lloris. This punt this time, somehow Barcelona were caught, and what ended up happening was it ended up being a 4v4. Lloris punts the ball into Kane. Kane's able to turn and drive forward, and now you have a 4v4. You have Artur looking to track back, Lenglet stepping forward, and what happens there is that Kane's able to slide the pass into Lucas Moura, who cuts across Alba, and what happens now is that space is created for Lamela to run at Semedo, and his cross ends up being deflected into Ter Stegen, who's able to flap his hands at the ball and make a good effort. But again, that is where they're really creating their chances. Besides that, they never really harmed Ter Stegen in the first half. And then we looked at some of the issues that they did have. One was pressing from the front, and that was a big issue. We look at how they try to do it here. You had Son out on Piqué. You end up having Kane stepping up across centrally. Then you have here Lucas trying to press to Lenglet. They end up playing the pass out to Lenglet, who drops in. It's Artur who drops in. Wanyama nowhere near him. And that is a big problem for Barcelona. So Lenglet plays it out to him. Wanyama takes his time and eventually gets across. And what happens here is that he plays the pass to Busquets, and Wanyama then gets attracted there, plays the ball back to Artur, and now there's space behind Trippier for Coutinho to get the ball, and he plays it into Coutinho, who ends up being taken out by Alderweireld, and that eventually leads to the chance that we mentioned earlier where Coutinho fired a effort right at Lloris. But then you look at the other chances where they're trying to just get the ball into players as quick as possible. One time we see Lloris punt the ball into Son. Lenglet steps to him. We have a recovering Artur trying to get off, and then Son's able to push away, but who steps in right after that? You have Alba stepping in. You have another marker stepping in. 4v1 for the most part, and we have Lenglet dispossess him. We have Trippier clear the ball on one occasion, and Trippier clears the ball, and what happens is that it falls to Kane. It falls to Kane, and what happens there's Busquets steps to him, but eventually Rakitic and Artur step to him, and he's dispossessed as well. When Barcelona when Barcelona weren't really doing their best in terms of pressing and Spurs were looking to get the ball long, they were able to individually swarm and counter press extremely well, and they ensured that Spurs players were unable to link play with their teammates, and that's what happened here. We saw Son get dispossessed, and then we saw Harry Kane dispossessed there, and that is where Barcelona were really doing a great job. Pressing, and when they dropped off deep, they ensured that Spurs couldn't play through them. They pressed okay as a unit, and in terms of pressing collectively to regain the ball, that was pivotal, and Spurs couldn't really create any chances. So we moved to the second half, and we have to figure out how Spurs were able to get 2 goals and how Lionel Messi ended up killing them off. Then we get to the second half, and again, that is still dominated by mistakes, and Spurs never really fixed the issues that they encountered in the first half. Is it down to the personnel? Who knows? When we look at it, we start early. We see here Busquets is able to dispossess Son, who's able to come into midfield. What happens is that Davies is pushed out. Davies is pushed out, so the ball is played out to Messi. Messi is able to pick it up, and what happens here is that Messi picks it up behind Davies, and he runs in what is now a 2v2. Suarez runs across Sanchez, Messi cuts in across Alderweireld, and Messi fires his shot off the post. It's a warning sign for Spurs, and if it shows that if they didn't shape up, it would get worse, and guess what? It did. Shortly after that, you have a clearance from Piqué, and you have Messi harrying Sanchez. Sanchez ends up playing it back out to Wanyama, but he's pressed by Suarez. What happens there is that as Suarez muscles Wanyama away, he slides the ball to Messi, and now you have Messi and Suarez running at the center backs again. He cuts in once more, and again he fires a shot on goal that hits the post. Warning signs for Spurs. Messi hits the post twice in the opening 5 minutes, but they get a goal shortly after that, and the goal kind of stems from what Spurs were doing throughout the first half, as quickly getting Lloris to cycle the ball into the attackers. He's able to throw the ball out to Lamela. When he throws the ball out to Lamela, Lenglet steps to him, which is already the first issue. So Lenglet steps to Lamela, and what happens is that Lamela is able to poke the ball into Kane, and with Kane dropping off, Busquets now has to cover him. So with Kane holding off Busquets, he clips the ball back to Lamela, who now gets past Artur and runs at Piqué, but Kane continues his run out to the right-hand side, and his run out to the right-hand side sees him run at Semedo. He's able to run at him into the box, cut in, and cut out and then back in, and he's able to curl his shot past the keeper. Now Spurs have a lifeline, 2-1 up after Messi hitting the post twice. How do they respond? Well, they end up camping in deeper once again, and it's Messi who's able to harm them, and it's just the fact that he's so good at being able to operate in those pockets of space. And again, this time it's him picking up the ball in between the central midfield in tight space from Artur, and he picks up the ball from Artur, and what happens here is again we see him pick up the ball, he cuts in ahead of the back four, he slides that ball behind Son for Alba. Once again, you have the attackers running into the box, Coutinho dummies it, Suarez dummies it, Messi's able to side foot his effort in, but it didn't stop there. They kept going. Rakitic this time picking up the ball, and we'll get these Spurs players back into their normal positions. Rakitic again picking up the ball, and what happens here is that when Rakitic picks up the ball to the right hand side, we have Lucas stepping out to him. So Lucas stepping out to him, Messi's able to pick up that ball in that space there. With Messi picking up the ball, we saw this a lot, Messi being able to pick up the ball in behind the space of Lucas and ahead of Davies. Davies now can't push forward because with Lucas now stepping to Rakitic, Semedo has space to push forward, and Semedo pushes back Davies. Now Messi's able to turn. What we have here is Suarez running across the center backs, and once again we see Coutinho running in behind Sanchez and across Trippier. Messi's able to slide that ball out, and what happens here is that Suarez gets onto it, but he fires a shot at the keeper. Throughout the half, we see Spurs kind of making mistakes as well. We see poor pass backs from from Wanyama, poor passbacks from Davinson Sanchez that puts Lloris in sticky situations. We end up seeing Spurs kind of push back into the game despite bringing on Sissoko, Llorente, bringing on Eric Dyer, but we saw Messi popping up into space. That chance there that I just mentioned, he popped up into space to the side of Dyer, who was stuck in the middle, whereas Barcelona brought on Rafinha. They ended up bringing Vidal, and Barcelona did encounter some issues towards the end of the half when we saw wings kind of get involved, intercepting, taking off the ball from Messi, playing diagonals, him and Kane playing diagonals to Trippier in behind Coutinho and Alba, but those nearly led to chances. Spurs' second goal, Lamella's, was a deflected goal, but again, it stemmed from Kane pressing Longley, and Barcelona made some mistakes as well, but for the grand scheme of things, they did control the tempo of the game. And you look at the final goal, again, it's Lloris playing it back, and you see the issue there, just a poor, not that he shouldn't pass it back, that actually shouldn't play it out there, but again, you see Rafinha step to it, and Barcelona win the ball back, and it falls to Messi, and Messi's free on goal, and he's able to finish off the game. But we break down the game as a whole. Barcelona's attacking scheme did work. Coutinho running in between Trippier and Alderweireld, Suarez looking to peel off Sanchez, Messi dropping deeper and playing as the creative fulcrum to create chances for them. Spurs were just a bit too open, a bit naive, conceding space to Messi, not really doing much, not really creating much chances unless they went long. Sure, they missed their key players here, but they didn't do a good job in terms of stopping Barcelona from attacking, and that was the big main issue here for them. And they probably will bounce back, but this puts their Champions League hopes of getting to the round of 16 in jeopardy. But let me know what you guys think. Are Barcelona favorites now to go on into this competition and possibly win it? Messi looks poised. And what about Spurs? Lost their opening 2 games. Is there any way that they bounce back and get out of the group? Meet me in the comments below. Don't forget I upload videos every day, and don't forget to subscribe to my channel. And don't forget, if you like this video, make sure to click a thumbs up button. And that was your daily dose of the interviews.